everyone, this is yet another introductory guide for beginner customizers. This guide will cover various painting methods, how they are used, and how to find the right one for you. I don't think I have announced my plans here, but I'm hoping to cover every aspect of model horse customizing with tutorials and guides and all that stuff. I'm going to upload all of them here. I will also be including color recipes, how to shade with an airbrush, and a lot of other things that I'm asked about a lot. This video will be covering painting methods, and I would really appreciate it if you guys liked and subscribed and comment and all that stuff, you know. I'm open to ideas, so if you guys have anything particular you would like me to cover, just let me know. Again, I'm not a professional, and as always, this is just my opinion. Okay, so we're going to start out with how to choose the right method for you. So everyone is different, and everyone definitely has an opinion when it comes to painting styles. Personally, I messed around with everything and found out that airbrushing was just my taste, my cup of tea, I guess. I would totally recommend that everyone try all the various types of methods just to see which one you like the best. You don't know, you may like one more than the other, like I did. So that being said, there are a lot of ways to customize a model as far as painting goes, but there are very few, I guess, categories. The main categories would be pastels, airbrushing, oils, and painting with acrylics by hand. I'm going to go into depth on each of these methods. Okay, so we're going to start out with pastels. Pastels come in lots of different forms, but are usually shaved down to produce a dust-like substance that you coat the model in layer by layer. There are tons of brands of pastels, but chalk pastels, pan pastels, and earth pigments are like the main three. You can find chalk pastels at your local Michael's or hobby store, and they're super inexpensive for how long they last. They come in little bricks like this right here, and they have to be shaved down and applied. Pan pastels can be purchased online and are a bit more expensive but have richer color and seem more solid than chalk pastels. Earth pigments can be purchased online from the Earth Pigments website and come in different size jars. Okay, so right here you're going to see on the very left I have pan pastels, in the middle is earth pigments, and on the right is the chalk pastels. Now you can see right here I'm drawing with each of them. I had actually went through this earlier, and pan pastels seem to be the heaviest and like the more dense kind, and it's kind of like right between earth pigments and chalk pastels seem to be like the middle ground. I don't think one's more dense than the other. They look just about the same to me. When dealing with any type of pastel, you need to be wearing gloves and a mask to prevent inhaling the dust. Pastels also love to stick to primer flaws and other areas. They also react to the natural oils on your fingers, so to avoid fingerprints on your model, you need to be wearing gloves. You also have to seal the entire model between every layer. In my personal opinion, I've tried all three, and pan pastels seem to be the best. But again, that's just me, and test all three of those out because they're all pretty good. Okay, moving on to acrylics in general. I wanted to cover acrylics in general because there are a lot of different kinds and different manufacturers. And I would say acrylics are the main way that most people paint models, but it's not like I took a vote or anything. Acrylic paint is basically any type of liquid paint that you've used. It's just a general category for paint. There are really cheap acrylics and there are really expensive acrylics. When I first started out, I always bought the cheapo paints because I was like, what's the difference? It's all paint. It's good to start out with cheap paints because you are still getting the hang of things, and that way you don't spend a bunch of money on stuff that you may not end up using. I did the same thing with pastels. I bought a bunch of pastels and I barely ever use them now. You're not going to paint your first model and it be absolutely jaw-dropping regardless of how good your paint brand is, so it's better just to like learn with cheap paints. Let me be the first to tell you that quality does matter when it comes to paint, and it could make your life a whole lot easier. I've had a few people argue with me about this, but I'm going to stand by my opinion. I see a lot of people using a brand of paint called Apple Barrel. Here it is, I actually happen to have some. Apple Barrel is a great inexpensive paint, but it's mainly used for wood crafts. So the paint is a little bit rougher after it dries. The models that I have received or have painted in apple barrel paint end up with a really rough texture, which is definitely not desirable when you want as smooth a finish as possible. However, when you're just starting out, it can be great. Once you have the feel of things, you can bump up your paints to better brands. If you're looking for better quality paints, there are a ton to choose from, and I definitely recommend testing different brands to see which ones that you like the best. I will forever stand by Winsor & Newton as the best paint I've used. However, I see a lot of other model horse artists using Liquitex acrylics. I've tried these, but personally I don't enjoy them that much, as I feel like they're a lot thicker than the Winsor & Newton, so. Okay, acrylics by hand. This is the way that a lot of people start out. This is actually the way that I started. Acrylics by hand is basically where you paint the model with a paintbrush and some paint. However, it is difficult to achieve a show quality model painting by hand, especially if you're a beginner. I would know. Now, some people have mastered this and have created amazing pieces that are just like insane. I don't have enough patience to do that, and one big issue with painting by hand is brush strokes. Now, even though I do airbrush, there are some things that you have to paint by hand, and it's just, there's no way to not do it. Painting whites, I do whites this way, which is by hand. Judges don't like to see brush strokes on models because it makes the model look rushed. And in order to avoid brush strokes, are you ready for this? Water. That's literally it. Like, I get asked this all the time. How are you doing that? What type of paint are you using? And it's literally water. You just add water to the paint and you mix it up. In order to avoid brush strokes, you have to water down the paint. Like, really water it down. I mean, it needs to be the consistency of milk. Then you paint every layer until the color is solid. Obviously, you have to let it dry in between each layers. It takes a while, and it isn't the most popular method of painting, but it's easy to clean, and it is not as hazardous as other methods. Make sure to clean your brushes, though, and don't let the paint dry on them, because that's how you ruin a brush. I would know that, too. Moving on. Airbrushing. This is by far my favorite method, and has always been my method of choice. I'm going to do a whole other video on airbrushing, so eventually I will have that up. Don't hold me to it, though. An airbrush is a tool that you use that sprays paint with the help of an air compressor. If you're going to buy an airbrush, you should use the same principle you would when buying a guitar. Don't spend over $100 on your first airbrush. Some people use them and do not like them at all. Then they never touch them again, and then that sucks because you spend a bunch of money on an airbrush. These airbrushes are available at Michael's or your local hobby store, and usually they have a super cheap $10, $20 one that are great for beginners, and I totally suggest using one of these to start out with. You also need a source of air, and I know they sell compressed air in bottles, which is good if you're just like testing the waters, but if you plan to really get into airbrushing, look into investing in a compressor. I paid $60 for mine, and I've had it since I started. Although it does overheat, it still works enough for me to deal with it. It's best to find a compressor that has a water trap and can change its PSI levels. That's a whole nother story, don't get me started on that. Once you've tested it and decided that you want to continue with an airbrush, you should definitely upgrade. When you invest in a good airbrush, it's really important you know how to clean it and take care of it. Your airbrush will not last long at all if you don't clean it. When you airbrush with acrylic paints, also you can't just dump the paint in there and let it rip. You have to thin down acrylics just like you would if you were painting them by hand. That way they can flow through the airbrush. However, because of this, you can get a pretty solid layer in one session. Obviously, I don't think this needed to be said, but I'm going to say it anyways, just for those who don't know. You can't put pastels or oils in an airbrush. It doesn't work, and you can't do it. There are different brands of airbrush paint as well that are already mixed and are already ready to just put into the airbrush, but whenever you're using an airbrush, you should be in a ventilated area to avoid inhaling the paint, and you should also be wearing a mask for that reason as well. You have to clean out your airbrush every time you switch colors, and I'm going to have a shading tutorial and a base color tutorial up for airbrushing at some point eventually. Also, for those who are looking into getting an airbrush, it's not a magic wand. You're not going to pull it out and then paint the most beautiful horse ever because you have an airbrush. That's not how it works. You still have to know color recipes, and it still takes you a long time to get used to dealing with one. I think after I had had mine a year, I pretty much knew what I was doing, but really don't expect to come right out of the gate with just the most amazing thing ever. I think that needed to be said. But anyways, okay, moving on. Oils. Okay, confession time. I have never experimented with oils. So everything that I'm stating here is just through what I've researched. Oils, like acrylics, have to be painted in layers, like if you were painting acrylics by hand. If you thin them, you have to use a special type of thinner because they are oils. They cannot mix with water. A lot of people use turpentine, which is extremely toxic if you inhale it, so all the necessary face masks and gloves, all that stuff, you need that. I don't know a lot about oils, so I'm not really a lot of help here. There are probably some other videos online that teach way more about oils than I ever could, but in conclusion, this just about covers everything in relation to methods of painting. I don't mess with oils a lot, and I don't mess with oils like at all, and I don't mess around with pastels a lot either, although I have been messing with them recently. So most of my tutorial videos will be done with acrylics and airbrushing. I hope this answered some questions. If not, feel free to leave them in the comments or DM me on Instagram, and I will be happy to help you. As always, I would love it if you'd like and subscribe and leave me a comment. Let me know if this helped you or what other tutorials you would like to see.